Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today's video is part 8 of our Scariest Places on Earth series. We have been to some terrifying places around the world. Today, we are going to enter an abandoned village which does not exist. As night falls, phones die, and strange whispers can be heard. This place is known locally as the Forgotten Village. Let's go. We decided to travel off the beaten path on this trip. We had no idea what to expect when we got there. But the journey was worth it, because as we turned the corner, we saw this village in front of us. It was like something out of a movie. There was fog everywhere, and there didn't seem to be a soul around. All of the doors we knocked on were answered with eerie silence. On the side of one of the houses, we saw these weird symbols carved into the walls, and as we walked further down the street, we could see more and more of them. They looked really old, like they'd been there for hundreds of years. Some of the houses had collapsed, others had their windows smashed in. It felt like we were walking through a graveyard of homes. We continued walking down the road and came across an old rusted swing set. It looked like something out of a horror movie. No child should ever play on such a thing. As we walked past, the chain made a horrible screeching noise, like fingernails on a chalkboard. We started to feel uneasy about being here, but we couldn't shake this feeling that we had to keep going forward. Finally, we reached the end of the road and turned around to go home. That's when we noticed something strange. The village wasn't on any of our maps, and when we pulled out our phones to get directions, we realized we had no signal. The sky was overcast, and the wind was picking up. We hurried along, hoping to get home before nightfall. As darkness began to fall, we could hear strange whispering sounds all around us. It sounded like someone was trying to speak, but their voice was so faint it was almost impossible to understand what they were saying. We tried to ignore it at first, but it just kept getting louder and louder. Then suddenly, right in front of us, a dark figure seemed to emerge from the shadows. We froze in fear as it slowly approached us, its face hidden in the gloom. Before we could make sense of what was happening, it vanished as quickly as it had appeared. Was it a ghost? A hallucination? We didn't know. We wanted to run, but our legs felt like they were filled with lead. We wanted to scream, but no sound came out of our mouths. As we stood there, frozen in terror, we could hear the whispers growing louder. Now, they were right next to us, swirling around in a vortex of sound. We could feel their cold breath on our necks, hear them hissing in our ears. Then just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The whispering faded away, and the forest around us grew silent. We didn't move for what felt like hours, too afraid to break the silence. Finally, when we were sure we were alone, we ran. We ran as fast as we could, desperate to escape the nightmarish village. When we finally reached the car, our hands were shaking so badly that it took several attempts before we managed to start the engine. We threw ourselves inside and slammed the door, our hearts pounding in our chests. As we sped away, we could still hear the whispers, though they were fainter now, like they were coming from far away. Safe at last in our hotel room, we locked the door and drew the curtains. But even in the safety of our room, we could still hear the whispers. They seemed to be coming from behind the walls, from the very floorboards beneath us. We tried to make conversation, anything to distract ourselves from the sound, but nothing worked. The whispers just kept going. We spent a restless night in the hotel, jumping at every creak and moan of the old building. Every time the wind blew, we thought it might be the last time we ever heard it. We never got a good night's sleep again after that. We left the village behind us and headed back to the city. But even there, we could still hear the whispers sometimes, just on the edge of our hearing. They followed us home, haunting our dreams, making our blood run cold. But there was something else, too. Something about the village had changed us. Something sinister and malevolent had entered us with those whispers and taken root in our minds. Since then, our lives have never been the same. We have tried to put it behind us, to pretend that it never happened, but the whispers always come back to haunt us, reminding us of what we saw and experienced that day. Now we want to share our story with you, to warn you about the dangers of the forgotten village, so please listen carefully. Don't go there. Whatever you do, don't go there. If you visit, you may never come back. You may never come back. Some say that if you walk among the abandoned houses and listen closely, you can hear the whispers of the villagers who lost their lives. Others say that the symbols carved into the walls are the key to unlocking the secrets of the village. What do you think? Are these stories just local legends, or is there something more to the forgotten village? As we drove deeper into the forest, the trees began to close in around us, forming a tunnel of branches overhead. The air grew colder, damper, and we could feel a sense of dread settling over us. Suddenly, the car sputtered and died, leaving us in total darkness. We tried to restart it, but it was no use. It wouldn't turn over. We were stuck, and as the realization hit us, a wave of panic surged through us. We tried to call for help, but our phones had no signal. We were completely alone in the middle of nowhere. We considered walking to the nearest house and asking for help, but which way was that? We couldn't see a single landmark. We were in the middle of an endless, dark, dense forest. As we sat there in the dark, we could hear strange noises all around us. The wind seemed to whisper through the trees, carrying with it the sound of footsteps, voices we couldn't quite make out. Fear began to creep up on us, coiling around our hearts, squeezing the breath from our lungs. Then we saw it. In the distance, a faint light flickered. Hope surged through us. Maybe we weren't alone. Maybe we could find help. We flagged down a passing car, and they agreed to take us in. But as we drove through the village, we noticed something strange. All of the houses looked the same. They were dark, dilapidated, abandoned. And as we passed by, we could hear the sound of whispers coming from inside. They let us in without a sound. The driver dropped us off at the nearest house and then drove away. We thanked them and started knocking on the door. But when no one answered, we started to get worried. We tried another house, then another, but each one was empty. Just when we were about to give up, we saw a light coming from one of the upstairs windows. We raced towards it, calling out for help, hoping that someone would answer. But when we finally reached the house and knocked on the door, there was no reply. We peered through the window and called out, but there was no response. We were just about to leave when we saw movement inside. Cautiously, we crept closer and saw a dark figure standing in the corner. Heart pounding, we watched as the figure slowly turned towards us. That's when we saw their faces. They were pale and gaunt, their eyes hollow and lifeless, and then they started to walk towards us. We screamed and ran as fast as we could, terrified of what might happen if they caught us. We could hear their footsteps behind us, their voices echoing in our ears, and then suddenly they were upon us. They grabbed our arms, pulling us back. We struggled to free ourselves from their grasp, but their grip was like iron. And then they whispered in our ears, their voices cold and emotionless. And that's when we realized they weren't human. They were ghosts. We were trapped in a nightmare, and there was no escape.